Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for tuning into one of our talks today. We are a year-round talk series bringing you the best creative voices across film, television, and theater, and I'm so delighted today to be joined by the fantastic Lorraine Toussaint, who's currently starring in the CBS series, The Equalizer. And the first thing I was really curious about is in terms of when you're building a roadmap for a character for a series like this, because especially when you're going into shooting the pilot, you really don't have all of the details for where her journey is going to go and all of the backstory. So you have to construct this idea and a lot of details as to who a character is, but also at the same time knowing that you might have to pivot some of those details as scripts come in further down the line. So what does that journey and process look like with that in mind for you?
You start with this sort of a blank canvas and you put in enough strokes to get you to launch, right? And knowing that while you're mid-air, all sorts of other colors and smaller strokes are going to come in that may not allow you to land where you thought you were going to land, or may keep you up in the air for quite a bit longer and maybe take you to another destination. But having said that, it's this show, for example, specifically, before we started shooting, I had a maybe a 2-hour conversations, a Zoom conversation with the writers' room, and I think I'm lucky enough to be at the point in my career where the writers and the creators actually want my input as to how do I see this character, because especially a character that operates in the narrative the way mine does. I really have a whole separate life than the McCall character who is out on the streets, beating up bad guys. As an ex-CIA op, who's been all over the world. She's retired now and trying to come home, and I've been holding down the home front. And what has that really been like? So creating a history of who is Aunt Vi and what's my relationship with Delilah, her daughter, as she's now trying to come home to be mom, where that is being rejected to a great extent by her daughter, who, teenagers are tough. You just don't put a placeholder and then feel like you can step right in and they're fine with that. She's got a lot of opinions about this situation. So this one, when I spoke to the writers' room, I said, Lorraine likes to do roles that I've never done before. I like to play characters that I have never touched on before. And I've done doctors and lawyers and social workers, and oh gosh, let's not make her boring. Let's make her maybe a painter. I've never played a painter. I said, so there are reasons why she's staying home other than babysitting and making gumbo or whatever, that's so boring. So the writers, to their credit and my good luck, they took a lot of the suggestions that were made and have incorporated it beautifully into the show. And I said, it's New York City, so please don't make her, sort of corporate and traditional, make her funky, make her an artist. So it's reflected in my crazy hair and it's reflected in my clothes. And so that sort of thing. I'm very lucky that I get to bring a lot of ideas to the characters that I play now.
And you were mentioning the relationship that she has with Delilah, where she's been kind of a second parent to her over the last few years. And I love the introduction of that dynamic between the two of you on screen, and thought it was so interesting that even just in those first few scenes, we're already seeing a dance between when she feels like she's part of the discipline and stepping in, but also having those moments where she pulls back and she's like, I'm going to leave the room so the two of you can figure this out, because they're all trying to figure out what that new dynamic is. So what did that journey look like in figuring out the very unique relationship between Vi and Delilah?
Well, for example, there was a scene we were shooting the other day where there were the three of us in the kitchen, and there was obviously a confrontation between Delilah and her mother and Queen and the McCall character. And the director, for example, wanted me to come in and be at the counter with the two of them. And I said, no, 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 no. I am just putzing in the background, putzing in the background. She's just putzing in the background until and observing this, having an opinion, but observing. So I'm very careful to make sure that those boundaries and that kind of navigation is really truly reflected in how we actually even just move around the space when we're in the same scene together. You know, I'm a mother. I have a 16-year-old. That's really helped in terms of playing this character. I kind of know when they're listening, when they're not, when to push, when to not. Again, also the writers, creators, they give me quite a bit of freedom in that area also.
And I feel like in terms of who she is as a character, that the fact that she has stepped into this parental role for Robyn really just says so much about who she is and what she's willing to give of herself for those that she cares about that are in her life, and especially for her family. And how did just even that fundamental detail as a foundation for her inform a lot of other choices when you were trying to figure out how she would approach certain situations?
Yeah. You know, I was also careful when I spoke to the writers that because my character doesn't have children, Lorraine does, that I have to be careful that people who don't have children have odd parental instincts that aren't necessarily the same that a parent would have. And that's why you, in some level, become the favorite aunt, because you don't necessarily make the right choices that are appropriate to the moment or to that age. Or so I wanted to also be careful that she really parented outside the box to a great extent, because this isn't her child. And this isn't an instinctive kind of parenting. It's from the heart. But, you know, she's probably going to talk to her about any and everything. You know, Aunt Vi is the one you go to talk about sex and drugs and rock and roll, because she's done it all. Those are the kinds of fun. I mean, you know, you can see this character having been a roadie. You know, she's traveled with the band. You know, hasn't always made choices. She probably's got a stash of weed in her room somewhere. You know, but it does make her the right person to be in the house with a teenager. Hopefully, there's nothing that young girl cannot talk to this character about, even when she can't talk to her mother.
It's also interesting how within the script, there's so many details in Robyn's character which impact your character and tell you a lot about her history and her backstory. You know, when Robyn's talking about the death of her father and how that impacted her, and the crossroads that she was at when she ended up in the army, and how and why. And that just gives you a lot of detail about the overall larger family history. So how useful was it for you to be combing through all of the scripts and just looking for those side character details that actually told you a lot about Aunt Vi at the same time?
It actually informs me in terms of what I can talk to Robyn about and what I can't talk to Robyn about. And I'm hoping that there's going to be a kind of a true lies aspect to this, where, you know, quite possibly, maybe Aunt Vi maybe knows more about Robyn than actually Robyn thinks she does, because she is a great observer of human nature, and she's a smart girl, is Vi. And so maybe she's figured out some of this before Robyn even realizes she's figured out some of this. And, you know, at some point, those chickens are going to come home to roost. And what happens when, and I know it's when, not if, when the bad guys find out where she lives, you know, how is that really going to impact the home front? So, but in the first few episodes, we're establishing Robyn as the hero. We're establishing that she fights for the underdog.
And to that point as well about, you know, Queen Latifah's character, Robyn, being someone who can't tell everybody around her all of the details of her life and has to keep a lot very close to her chest. I was curious about how that impacted the way that the two of you built that rapport and that relationship out, and what the unique aspects were for both of you, because, you know, you're living in a home with someone day by day who can't tell you what they were even doing throughout most of the day.
She lies a lot. And I think as a parent, as a surrogate, you know, it's not unlike the teenager who also lies. you know? And so I think Vi sniffs out all the lies that are going down, whether she speaks to them or not. Those are the interesting choices. How much does she actually address the duplicity? That's There's a lot in the silence there, but I like playing that because anything that gives me a more complex inner life in a character is always what I'm interested in.
Mhm. And so much of the dynamic on a set is always set by the person who's in the lead role, and even down to, how they like to approach working on scenes with the rest of their castmates. What is that tone and environment that Queen Latifah really sets on this show for you and the rest of the cast?
Oh, she's incredibly professional and she's completely prepared. And she is lighthearted and she's very warm. And this is her party and she's hosting it beautifully. She's very generous in the rehearsal process and in the filming process. We're just actors doing what we do and loving what we do. That's the best kind of atmosphere. That's the one you hope for. And so thus far, it's kind of a lovely dream job.
And you were mentioning earlier having Zoom calls with the writers' room, and you've been filming through COVID. How has that really impacted the way that you traditionally work on TV shows when it comes to a lot of the rehearsal process and how you're preparing for scenes before you start shooting them?
Gosh, that's really tough. That's a big difference pre-COVID and where we are now. Just the onset family dynamic is very different. I mean, we walk into something that feels almost post-apocalyptic every morning with a whole medical unit situation, that kind of a gauntlet that you have to go through every day, where you're first pulled up to be tested. And most of us are tested just about almost every day. When I'm not there, I have home tests. I mean, I'm tested a lot. And so you get there, and there's some days I go to work and I'm tested twice for some reason before I even get to my dressing room. And then, you really are quarantined in your rooms. Anyone that comes in is shielded in masks. I mean, when I walk from the dressing room to set, it's almost like, like the long green mile, where, someone, they have a barker that goes ahead and literally shouts to people, actor walking, shields down, actor walking. And you see people scattering, like, get away from that actor, it's like, and so they're really doing their best to keep us safe. And there are zones once we are on set, but it's difficult because, part of being in the trenches, when my daughter was a baby, she would say, "Mommy works in a cave," because it was so dark. You go and we were all kind of cave dwellers. Um, you knew everyone, everyone's face, you develop relationships with the crew. I haven't seen my crew's faces. I haven't seen their faces. It's hard. Everyone is masked and shielded, especially around us. So that's very, very different. It's very isolated. But, it is what it is. And having been when I was on Your Honor, there was a false positive among the actors, and we had to shut down. We shut down hard and fast. They walked onto the set and shut us down. It was a false reading, but it's a false reading shut us down for 5 days. It's, you can replace almost any other department except the actors. If we go down, it goes down. So that's different.
Has it had an impact on any of the dynamics within a lot of the scenes that you're filming as well? Because obviously they're being really cognizant about trying to not bring too many people onto set and really just having it be the characters that are so necessary for a scene, and even down to the blocking of scenes where you're keeping a little bit more distance than you usually would, especially for your character because she's part of this intimate family dynamic.
Yeah, yeah. You know, you tend to be more conscious and cognizant of any scenes where you hug or where you get close or where you touch. And um, I tend to not pay attention to that because there are COVID sort of marshals on the set that are sort of policing that. And that's another element that's there. There are COVID police there that are sort of defining and determining how close you can get, how close you can't, what you can do. We're masked up until, for all the rehearsals, up until they say action. So sometimes you don't even see the other actor's face until the camera is rolling. It just takes another level of focus, no doubt about it. It's tougher.
Yeah. And I wanted to talk a little bit as well about directors on the show, because obviously with television, you always have different directors who are coming in for different episodes. But in particular, I was interested in the relationship with Liz Friedlander, who directed the pilot episode, because they have such an impact on what that character is going to come across like, what the entire tone of the show is going to feel like. So what did that collaborative relationship with her look like as you were all working on that episode?
Liz was great. Liz did the first 2 episodes, which was really lucky for us because she really, the first couple of directors really do establish us in a particular way. And it's really good to have a clear mind and someone who really knows the vision of the show going forward to help you make those initial choices. Even if they get changed, it's important to get out the gate strong. Liz was terrific. She knew the material backwards and forward, and she'd had a lot of time to spend with it because we were 3 days into about to shoot. I think we shut down on the Thursday, and we were supposed to start shooting that Sunday back in November, and didn't pick it up until, no, Lord, I'm losing time. Was it February? Wherever it was months before we could get back, at least 6 months before we could get back to shooting. So she at least had they had a lot of time to think about this, write the scripts, go further into the narrative than maybe we would have if we didn't have that time. So I feel like now the writers know exactly where they're going. They've had time to break a lot of those stories and hash through a lot of it, talk to a lot of us. So we're going strong right now.
Well, with that extra time and the fact that you were just mentioning how it gave such an opportunity to go deeper, are there details that you feel you had the opportunity to really uncover with your character that maybe you wouldn't have happened upon until you were actually shooting a lot of the scenes with her?
Maybe, but honest to God, there's a certain part of this that only comes to life when you're standing face to face with the other person, right? And you can only do so much in your head and in the kind of a vacuum. And that's the least interesting way to go about the work. And so, I did a lot of journaling, I did a lot of character writing and all that good stuff, but none of that stuff is tested until you're standing face to face with Leia, who plays the 15-year-old, or standing with Queen, who's playing McCall, and you begin to energetically see what is this exchange. And then there's the newness of the actors too. We're kind of clumsily falling in love with each other. And we do have to fall in love with each other. It's best, you hope that it's a love fest, and you're tentative and you're a little shy, and you're putting yourself out there, and how much is too much. So it's a lovely clumsy dance, both as an actor and as a character in the first several episodes. That's just what it is.
You also recently had the film The Glorias, where you played Flo Kennedy, and I love the way that you've talked about how with Julie Taymor, when you were working on the scripts, even before you were filming, that you would be able to call her and say, you know, I think maybe now that I've gotten into the character, she would say things a little bit differently, and Julie would have conversations with you and was very open to that. Sometimes she would call Gloria and ask her, you know, how would Flo have said this, and it's just such a thing that not every director is and writer is open to shifting and changing. Sometimes it is, this is the script, this is what I think. And so I just wanted to ask about the way in which that was such a gift to you in terms of shaping this character and your performance with the openness that she had with you in that way.
Oh gosh, I love some Julie Taymor. Oh my God. And you know, I love Gloria Steinem. I feel so honored and privileged to have been able to spend real quality time with those women. And gosh, Gloria is she's one of my heroines. Um, you know, I'm at the point in my career where I have enough of a reputation in the trenches that I am always character driven and I fight for as much truth as possible within these characters. And so you never have to worry that you're having some sort of egoic battle with me, Lorraine. Um, and I always want to make the work better. And you know, really terrific directors only want me to do my job, which is to make what they have given me come to life in a way that is even bigger and deeper and richer than they could have imagined, right? And so um, the deeper I dove into Flo Kennedy, the more I watched her in terms of the rhythm of her speech and there were whole bits once we started filming that I was so pleased to surprise myself that I was sort of able to start vamping like Flo. I mean, and improvising. I'd read enough of how she spoke and her famous phrases that I could start to just kind of vamp a little bit with her. And that's a good feeling when you're in a character, when the character starts to speak through you, as opposed to sort of, you know, you're putting on this heavy mantle, but suddenly it's part of your being, and then something else starts to bubble up, and I love being surprised by myself in the moment of self. So that's the best feeling when you go, ooh, wow, I didn't know that was there. Look, oh, wow, she's really doing her thing. Lorraine, get out of the way. Get out of the way, Lorraine. Move, move, move.
And when you look at your career as a whole, you've got the most stunningly eclectic mix of characters. And even earlier, you were mentioning how you always try to play characters that are unlike other people that you've played before. But even going back to a lot of your early characters and roles, that's always been the case right from the beginning. And that seems like the hardest time in your career to really make that possible, because it can be really daunting to say no to projects when you're just trying to keep working and keep learning and meeting people and working on different projects and different characters. So has there always been a consciousness of that, or was it really just fortuitous in the types of roles that you managed to get early on?
You know, early on, you get very one-dimensional roles, honestly. You're just there to serve one aspect of the narrative, oftentimes. And then if you're lucky enough, you get you get put into a niche where it's so claustrophobic, but it means that you're lucky enough to actually be working. And you know, this industry likes to hire you for the last thing they saw you do. They want exactly that thing, nothing else. Do that. And a part of me always knew that, but I was never interested in doing what I just did. And I love complexity, and where there is no complexity, I will infuse complexity. I will put it into that character in ways that it got to be a game early in my career. How complex can I make it, and they don't even realize how complex I'm making it? And so some of that is truly Lorraine having infused a lot of these characters with things that I wanted to be playing. And because they're so busy looking over there, they left me alone. I've been left alone a lot, which is so wonderful. Except for by really terrific directors, and then that's even more wonderful. So yeah, and you always have the power to say no to things, you know. No, I don't want to do that. I always knew I had the power of the no, because I always have done it. I've always done it for myself, for the joy that I get out of it, the adventure, the internal adventure that I'm on. And I've never really tried to serve any other masters outside of myself very much. I know I've got to deliver a product, but what I'm actually doing inside is so much more fun because I'm an only child. I know how to play with myself.
Well, I get so excited every time I see you pop up on screen in a new character because of what you always manage to do and the complexity that you always bring to them. And I'm really looking forward to watching the rest of the episodes of The Equalizer. And thank you so much, Lorraine.
Thank you so much. Great questions. Thanks a lot.